Hey there, honey bunnies. Welcome to episode 21 of Sovereign Storytellers Podcast. This is your host, Michelle Wolf. You can find me at thatmichellewolf.com or facebook.com/thatmichellewolf. If you ever want to ask questions about a podcast or send in an idea of something you'd like to hear covered, you can send that to info@thatmichellewolf.com. So today's episode, I want to talk about the word healer. And I was going to put the title just "You're Not a Healer," even though that might irritate some people. The older I get, the less concerned I am about irritating people, so it's not a huge deal, but I think that's what I'm going to put as the title. Here's the problem I have with that word, and the reason why it comes up is I'm putting together a short course for coaches, therapists, healers, facilitators, I guess, would probably be another category. Basically, anyone who works with other people for the purposes of helping that other person do a thing, change their lives, cure an addiction, handle money better, whatever it is. We're going to talk about boundaries and energy flows and what does that word healer even mean? So the problem I have with it is although in the past it probably had a different energy to it, I feel like because we have been steeped in the medical model for so long, that the word healer has kind of taken on the same connotation as doctor, only generally healers don't take insurance. But I feel like, and of course there's always a tendency to give your power away, but I feel like people give their power and authority away to healers the same way they do doctors. Perhaps in ancient days, the term healer was more of a partnership. I don't really know. But the problem I have is it carries that tone of the medical model, which I really don't like. I don't like it that we give our authority away to doctors. And I don't like it when I see people giving their authority away to healers, or putting healers in a category that's inappropriate. This can come also not only with the medical model, but, there's unethical people out there that give everybody a bad name. There are people who use the term healer as a way to stay in an inappropriate position of authority. There's also something to be said for the placebo effect, where people will tend to give more credence to someone they perceive as having an authority that someone else doesn't, or that they themselves don't. I think what happens to a lot of healers, I've certainly seen this in therapists and other coaches, is using a term, giving yourself a title, can mean a way of empowering yourself, but it can also be a really subtle way to make sure that you maintain this quiet little hierarchy, a little bit above the client, not in a bad way, but as a way to not have the true connection and energy flow that can come when you don't have that hierarchy, when you are on a level playing field, because you have done your work and you understand that you don't have truly anything to offer that person other than to be a conduit to tune them up. So I will see healers doing that because they don't want to feel the client's pain. And you can use the word client, patient, customer, whatever, interchangeably. The person being, air quotes, worked on. A lot of new coaches and like even Force Reiki practitioners, energy healers, they aren't steady on their feet yet. And so they do have to keep a little bit of a distance in the beginning, because you're learning who you are in that space, in that role. And you're also tuning into your client's energy system and their body language if you're in person, the tone of voice if you're on the phone. I get an enormous amount of information from someone's voice, which is why I don't do video sessions. But when you are doing that and you're new, you're really trying to match up a lot. You're spending a lot of energy. Is this mine or is this theirs? How did I feel before I came to the session? How do I feel now? New therapists have to go through this too. Like, is this my issue or is it their issue? What exactly am I picking up here? So fair enough, you keep a little distance. But later, and hopefully you are doing a daily practice so that you know and you're very familiar with what your energy is like, later you should be able to flow and really perceive that person's energy on a deeper and, let's say, louder level, because you know who you are and you know the signature of your own makeup. So you can feel when it's someone else's emotions, energies, whatever you want to call it, crossing yours, entering into your realm. If you've done your work well, then you should know clearly that this is the person you're facilitating a process with, and it's not you, which leaves you in a position to be very, very objective and to state clearly the truth. When you're in a healer position, some kind of facilitating position, you have to do the work on your ego. And that's another problem I have with this word is I've seen healers like issuing directives and prescriptions like a doctor. And I'm not talking about one person in particular. Frankly, I feel like people who call other people out in their industry and don't say a name is kind of, it's kind of crap. Like, if it matters enough to you to call that person out, then you should put your ass on the line and say that person's name. Like, if you're so worried that you need to warn people about someone, then you should say that person's name, which I will do. Like, if I ever feel like I need to, I can't imagine a situation like that. But if I ever did, I will say that person's name, and I encourage you to do the same. Otherwise, it's just gossip. It's drama making, in my opinion. So I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm speaking in generalities. I'm speaking as having been a teacher of other teachers and likely in the next year moving further into that role through teaching this program for healers to really get clear on the depth of what that can be like when you're a completely neutral conduit. So, and a lot of times new healers will keep that distance because they're still experiencing the anxiety of being new. I mean, there's a learning curve in being a healer, and it can take a whole lot longer than you think. And if you're still second guessing yourself, which you do in the beginning, then there's more of a distance and more of a clunkiness to the session. Your client likely won't know that, but you probably will. And you'll notice as you go on through the years that it just gets easier and easier. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who say, I'm a healer, and you can feel the tone of unhealthy arrogance in that. You can feel the fear behind it that says, I'm going to give myself a title and a role so that I can be separate from you and above you and disconnected, really. And even though their work may be somewhat effective, it's not the rich, complex tapestry of someone who's not struggling with that. When you're comfortable with yourself and you have a few years under your belt, you start to recognize that every client is your healing session also. It's not you doing a thing to or for someone else. This is why I don't like systems that say, here, I'll clear that energy for you. That's bunk. If you don't clear the beliefs that were holding that energy in place to begin with, you've done nothing but made somebody feel a little better. I know I'm sounding kind of assy about this, but I can get on my soapbox pretty big about it because there's no training. There's no central standard, and I don't want there to be, frankly. I don't think the coaching industry needs regulating in the same way therapists do. I do think consumers need to be educated and do their homework. But what happens when you're holding yourself separate from that, it's that you don't want to feel the client's reciprocal part of that healing session. Every healing session is for both of you. We come together with clients for a particular reason. Sometimes we're conscious of why people cross our paths, and sometimes we're not conscious till much later, if ever. I always tell people I'm working with that are healers or therapists or coaches, if you're struggling, think about what your last 3 client sessions were about, and you'll usually, almost, I'm going to say all the time, find a commonality. This is pretty common knowledge in that industry. Like you'll see a string of clients struggling with victim energy, which is what's been happening lately for a lot of people, victim energy, which can lead you to feel more like a victim or push you into trying to rescue other people that you think are a victim rather than encouraging them to find their way out. You just want to step in and fix it. So that's part of being a healer. But you'll find a theme. Relationship trouble. The last 3 people were struggling with cravings, or the last 3 people were struggling with self-doubt. And so then that lets you know what you're struggling with. We can't see ourselves, right? So that's part of what that class is going to be like. Like, how do you see yourself in your client? But if you're using the term healer as a way of staying separate, a way of keeping a distance because you don't like feeling what session's triggering you, then not only are you doing your client a disservice, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Like, why are you in the field anyway then? Because people typically don't become healers because it pays so well or because it's so easy. It's not. Some coaches do really well, but like massage therapists and energy healers, they're not getting paid primo coaching rates, and most of them can't or don't bill insurance, so they're not making good money like a therapist would either, although, we don't want to go down that road. That's a tangent rabbit hole that we don't need to go down. But what I'm trying to get across is we're missing out if we don't open up to the energies that we're flowing through our own body, and it's, being delivered to your client. And if we have that term healer on it, we tend to want to mess with it and fiddle with the process. We won't just stand there and experience that flow and feel if the client is drawing it in or rejecting it. If it's being drawn through you into them and then back to you, you both get a session. It's not about healer and healee or patient or client. It's this back and forth dynamic that can be truly profound. if it's allowed to be. So if you're holding yourself at a distance by being a little too professional, then you don't get the full deal. I'm not saying that you won't have a great experience and that your client won't experience a healing or a change in the problem that they came to you with in the first place, but it could be so much more. We need a different word. I've been trying on the word teacher. I don't really like that either. It's still that hierarchy. Not that I don't know some stuff. I do have over 20 years experience. I am going to know ways to navigate more than someone who's in their first or even their fifth year of practicing with other people. That doesn't create a better than situation unless I allow that or create that. I don't like groupies. I don't like it when people put me on a pedestal. I'm certainly not going to put other people on a pedestal either. There's a difference in respect and worship, I guess. So when you're functioning as a conduit, you set yourself aside, and facilitator might be a good word for this. I'm not really sure. Honestly, you could probably tell by the way I'm babbling around here that I don't know the answer to this. I just know that the days of hierarchy are over. Hierarchy and patriarchy, it's kind of the same thing. A ranking system. Everyone has value to offer. And when we fall into that ranking system, we just lose. We're losing opportunities that we deserve to have and our clients deserve to have. So when you're a conduit, and this can be in a session or in your daily life, but you are setting your mind and your agenda to the side and allowing whatever wants to happen to happen. And if you're a new healer, this is the absolute best method for you because you don't need to worry about it. You take your skills and your practices and your sensitivities to a session. You set your mind aside and you trust. If the session seems to go awry, that's not you. If you have set yourself aside and you have shown up to the best of your ability with all of you present, not distracted by other problems or, fully mindful in the session and the client is not happy with you, that's really not about you. If you can check all those boxes. Okay, did I clear my energy first? Was I secretly worried about something? Was I secretly invested in them getting a result? Did I secretly want the gold star of validation? We all want that when we're new to this. I can honestly say after this many years, I really just, this is going to sound weird, but I really just don't care. I always show up 100%. I'm never multitasking. I'm never thinking about something else if I'm on the phone with a client. I always said this prayer, and I wasn't sure why I was doing it. Now I know. But even as a baby therapist, before I went into a session, I would say, let me be paused. Let me set myself aside. And angels and guides and all beings on Team Invisible, please be present. Come through me and create the best possible outcome for this particular person. And then I would go do some therapy. I didn't want the responsibility of controlling the flow of a session. I still don't. I 100% ascribe to the saying, no credit, no blame. I don't take credit if you feel better. I don't take blame if you don't. The only thing I'm responsible for is bringing to you the very best I have to offer. And that's it. I follow the energy, I listen to the tones, I pay attention to what I feel in my body, and I check it out with clients like, hey, you're talking about this and my chest feels like there's an elephant on it. Is that you? You feel that? Almost all the time it's like, yeah. And then we go there. And we trust that person's system, we trust it. We set our egos and our minds aside and we say, hey, I believe in you. I know that you know the answers for your own healing, your own transformation, and it's my job to facilitate the sometimes circular process of getting to your wisdom, not mine. I'm going to give you some homework. I'm going to ask some questions that are designed to access your wisdom. The homework is designed to increase the access to your own wisdom. It's not designed to make sure that you come back to me for another session or book a whole coaching package. It's not designed that way. People can come to me for one session and get a lot. That's what clarity sessions are. Sometimes they want to go deeper and do a whole process over 16 weeks. That's a coaching package. Sometimes they want a group experience and do a methodical process over 16 weeks with a group, and that is Sovereign Storytellers, the group, the namesake of Sovereign Storytellers podcast. But that's not the point. Have you defined for yourself what do I feel, think, perceive? How am I being in the world when I use the title healer? When I say, oh, I'm a healer, what's underneath all that? Is it pure? Is it egoless? Is it humble? I think I'm going to call the course I'm creating Humility for Healers, because that's my concern. Is I see some healers and coaches in general really ego tripping. Like, I know something and you don't know it, and so I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to bestow something upon you that you don't have. That's garbage. We're all connected. We're all a part of the collective. You can't say we're all connected on one hand and then say, I'm going to bestow upon you something you don't have. That's not true. You may be bestowing upon someone some tools and some different ways of seeing things. A lot of coaching and therapy is just reframing and asking really good questions and following the lead of the energy to know if the questions you just ask are the right ones, and if they're not, to ask some more. But I don't have something you don't have. You have it all. If I believe in the collective, which I do, then I have to then therefore believe that you are every bit as open and available to that as I am. Now say you go to see someone because you do feel stuck, because that happens because we can't see ourselves very clearly often. I mean, a lot of times we can't see ourselves at all because we're not asking the questions that would help us see ourselves. Who am I irritated with? Which of my clients do I want to fire? And why? What am I focused on Facebook? What have my last 3 sessions been about? I mean, you can ask those questions and get an idea. But when you're stuck, you've got to go see somebody. But don't ever go see someone thinking they have something you don't. What they have is the ability to reflect back to you, to remind you that you know yourself best more than anyone else. So because there's this wrapped up stuff around the word healer, then I feel like it sets new healers up for a lot of stress that's so unnecessary. They feel like they have to know the answers. New therapists are like this too. New coaches are like this too. There's so much anxiety about I've got to know I've got to know the answer. I've got to be able to give this client the right answer, to do this technique exactly right so that this person gets exactly what they need. It's not up to you. That's where we can fall into arrogance. Then later, if it's successful, you think you did that. But actually, all you did, again, was open the pathway for the client to receive it for themselves. New healers, coaches, actually this happens to pretty much anybody working with people, is they put that pressure on themselves, and then if it doesn't work, or the person doesn't come back, then they blame themselves. Like, no credit, no blame. You didn't do it, you didn't not do it. It's not about you. To me, if you put your feet on the path of a healer, it requires of you to stand down, to step back, and constantly be saying, Lord, make of me an instrument of thy peace, an instrument of thy healing, thy will, not my will. Soul, spirit, source, whatever you think you're doing, working with the trees, plant consciousness, all of that. You got to get your head out of the game. You got to make sure that you're not taking credit and not blaming yourself unnecessarily. There's a difference in evaluating your skill level and practicing versus blaming yourself if things don't go well. So I could tell you stories all day long of having sessions where I could literally feel the energy bouncing back. Like I could feel it coming through my body. When I was doing Usui Reiki, it would come through my head. And now doing Forest Reiki, which you can see at the website, and I, of course, highly recommend. Now it comes through my entire body. It's like my body is a lightning rod. My whole body's involved, not just my upper chakras, all of them. But I can feel it flowing through in a torrent, and I can feel it sort of hit that person and bounce back, or just flow around as if they're shielded against it. Now, they may be telling you that they're open to it, but you can feel that barely a trickle is getting in, or none is getting in. And that's good information for you. And if you've got your ego set aside, then you don't stress out and think you're doing something wrong, because that's what will happen. You're like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. It doesn't feel right. It's not flowing. It feels clunky. It feels like we're just in our heads. It's not working. It is working. A person is just not available for it. Over time, you'll know very quickly if a person is truly available for change or not. And then there's other times that you're flowing that energy and that person is just sucking it through like a straw. And you can feel it, and it's flying through them and it's flying through you. And you're both being transformed in that moment. What a sacred act. There's nothing better than when you have a client who's so ready and you're there just to hold the space, just to energetically midwife them from one state to another, to just be the conduit. Not taking credit and not placing blame. So I have a whole lot to say about this, and also I like to keep my podcast short. And also I worked today, and so I don't know that I'm being as clear as I would like to be. So I will do a part 2 for this, and it'll come out next Friday. So let's just call this one You're Not a Healer, part 1. And then next week we'll do You're Not a Healer, part 2. And I'm curious what you think about it. A lot of people think I'm wrong. I mean, I've been told you're wrong, that we need those titles and that I am. I've been told this. No, I am doing a thing that they don't do. I am different. I am delivering something to them. And I disagree with that. And everyone does what everyone does. But I want us to have this perspective out there too. That you're not the healer. You're the space holder. You're the sacred conduit. You're the person brave enough to say, God, flow through me and do whatever needs to be done here. And I will just step back and flow as openly as I possibly can. And as it loosens things in me, then I too will heal. I too will transform. I too will grow and change. So, if you're an energy worker, I don't think you can coach your dog. You certainly can't coach cats because I've tried. I'm trained in conflict resolution, and I was a mediator for a while. Cats don't buy it. They don't care about getting to yes when they're in conflict. But what you can do, if you're an energy worker, is practice on animals a lot, because animals will let you know whether they want it or they don't want it. And they can get super offended if you're trying to heal them of something that they don't want you to mess with. And it's really not our business. If my cat has a sore hip, and one of them does, Juniper Hoot, has sore hips, sometimes he wants me to work on them. Sometimes he doesn't. It's very clear the difference, because sometimes the energy bounces off and he'll get up and leave. Sometimes he will, scoot his little butt closer to my hands and we'll have a really good intense session. But it's not my business, even for the cat. I know that some people will chase their animals around like, no, please let me give you the energy. I want you to be well. That's your agenda, not theirs. We could talk about that next time too. What's your agenda? Why are you trying to make someone well? Why are you trying to change them in any way just because you think their life could be better? What if they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do by being sick or dysfunctional? It's not your business. It's not your place. We can offer, hey, I know a thing. It costs this much and here's what we'll do, and potentially you could experience this. If you're interested, here's my number, here's my booking link, here's the class information, and drop it. We'll talk more about that too. Nobody gets benefit of, very rarely does somebody get benefit out of something that they've been hand delivered on a platter that they haven't sought out themselves. Or they say they're seeking, and you can tell by their behavior that it's really just lip service and they're not really seeking. Do you see? This is why we have to have a part 2, maybe a part 3, because, oh my God, I can jabber on about this all day long. And none of us have all day long. So I'm tired. I need a shower. Okay, honey bunnies. When you're contemplating this, here's your homework if you choose to accept it. Think about your title. What title have you given yourself or had somebody give you? Coach, therapist, healer, even the word empath, priestess, priest, goddess, whatever, doctor, lawyer. Think about your titles and how do they serve you and how do they not serve you? How do they keep you locked into something that maybe you would rather not be locked into? Explore that. Let me know. Come find me on Facebook. Or you can email me, info@thatmichellewolf.com, facebook.com/thatmichellewolf. You can leave a post on the page. I turned messaging off because weirdos. All right. Think less, feel more. Go check out Forest Reiki, and I will talk to you again next week. Thanks for being here.